It's not always easy to figure out what's right, what's wrong, who's right, who's wrong. Justice doesn't mean the same thing to everybody that's affected. And that's a lot of pressure to get it right, especially when you're the prosecuting attorney on a case. And we're going to talk about that next. Chris Tunnell is our guest on Purpose Under Pressure. The heat is on. Let's get cooking. This is Purpose Under Pressure. It's a podcast about people who swing their feet out of bed every single morning, put them on the floor and get busy, and they do it on purpose. You and I do that every day. These are stories about others who do the same things, and we're also up against pressures, and so this podcast is about those pressures, those storms that rise, that try to knock us down. So thank you for being a part of this show. Thank you for listening. If you are enjoying this show, and we are in our 55th episode, I think at this point, give us a like or a follow or subscribe, or maybe even tell your friend. I appreciate it. I think people will appreciate that you like this show and that you think it's good enough for maybe them to listen to as well. That's how we'll grow this movement. So I appreciate your support in that way. Purpose Under Pressure is brought to you by Sandler by the Ruby Group, serving sales professionals nationwide from their Akron and Columbus, Ohio locations, one of the highest performing Sandler sales training affiliates in the nation. There's a lot of them, but Sandler by the Ruby Group is at the top of the heap. They're going to make a difference for you and your team because they do things on purpose. If your organization is on purpose and you're trying to get that across to your customers, Sandler by the Ruby Group can help with that. It'll be the best call you make. Check them out online at therubygroup.sandler.com. I'm excited about today's show because this show, as we said, is all about purpose and it's about pressure. And I'm a very black and white guy. Like if it needs to be done, it's going to get done. It's going to get it right. And don't do me wrong. And today's guest, I think, has a lot of experience with that. He is the 10-year, almost coming up on 10-year, Ashland County Prosecuting Attorney. This show is based here in Ashland. He's our county attorney. I don't know him well, but I do know him as a very good man. And I'm excited to introduce you to Chris Tunnell. Chris, welcome to Purpose Under Pressure.
Thank you, Brian. Good morning.
Good morning. So you're the prosecuting attorney, which means everything you do is on purpose. Everything you do has a drive and a mission and a goal and an outcome. And it's also based in fact and based in truth. And I think that's an honorable and admirable place to be. And so I thank you for all that you do, and I thank you for your service. I'm interested if you can tell me, though, from your point of view, what is your purpose, Chris, maybe as a person and as the prosecuting attorney here in Ashland?
You know, I guess the overarching purpose of what we do here is to pursue justice, which anymore is sometimes a difficult word to define. You know, we try to dial down a little bit on that, and we try to get it right. I think at its core, we try to hold people accountable and make sure everybody's following the straight and narrow, whether that's on the criminal side of the office or the civil side of the office.
Why is it difficult to define? The law is the law. The right is right. Wrong is wrong. And time shouldn't change that. But you said it to yourself, more and more these days, it's becoming difficult to define. Can you explain that more?
It is in the context of what we do. We're I think, nationally in a place where we're debating criminal justice reform and what that means, what that looks like. Over the course of criminal justice in the United States, we sort of have these waves where the criminal justice system is focused at times on the individual, whether that's the defendant or a victim. And then sometimes it rocks back and forth. So as we talk about what is justice, there's a group of people that would say justice is making victims whole, achieving some result that they're satisfied and happy with. But then there's another group that would say that justice, in a more like social justice kind of sense, is about the individual defendant, and maybe recognizing that they're in a place because of wrongs that were done to them, and we're supposed to fix that. And it's it's a little more, I don't know if I complicate it myself. I think I probably do, in that I really think the criminal justice system is a little bit about both, but mostly about the rest of us. The whole point of having a legal system that has consistency and rules that are enforced is so that the average person can get up, have breakfast, leave their house, go to a place of employment, do their job for the day, come back and enjoy their house, and then enjoy the benefits of that employment without having roving bands of, crooks break your house. Otherwise you'd have to stay at home all day, peeping out the windows, making sure nobody's coming to get you. So,
yeah, we've got to have law and order, right? And otherwise we can't have a society. I think that's not a political statement. And I mean, I think some politicians are using that, but it's still an actual statement that we need to have. I'm interested, Chris, how do you, now you've been there for over 10 years. I'm not sure your history before that, but I know you've been practicing longer than that. So you've seen a lot of changes. How has that impacted you? You may not have changed, or you may have. How does your viewpoint on how you do your job, your purpose every day, how have you been able to maintain that, or how have you had to change based on the societal shifts that have taken place?
That's a great question, Brian. What the societal shifts sort of changed the rules that we're working in this business. So it changes the framework of what you have to do, and how you achieve your goals. I think the goals remain the same. So, I started prosecuting in 2001 as an assistant prosecutor. So I've worked within the criminal justice system since 2001. And there have been a lot of changes. There's a lot of changes in the way we're supposed to do business.
Gosh, the world has changed. Yeah.
Yeah. This is a very different world now from 2001. But I think the core goals, the core motivation of remain the same. That we, within each case that we charge or we review, or each civil matter that we're looking at, it's with an eye towards where do we want to be ultimately. And then what they've done is they've just sort of changed the path that you have to go on in order to get there. So, but I think where you want to be, your eye on the ultimate end of any individual matter has remained the same.
So let's talk about that real quick. I think that's one of the things, as I prepared for this show, that I kept coming back to. How do you know, so this is purpose under pressure, your purpose is justice. How do you know you're right? Do you go to bed at night sometimes wondering, do I have this right? Because the way I see it, the individual on the other side of court typically says, no, I didn't do that. This is the easy dumbed down version. No, I didn't do that. Or at least I didn't do it the way you said I did it. And on your side of the court is, yes, you did. We're going to prove that you did. They're going to say, no, I'm going to prove we didn't. How do you know you're right?
In order to do this job, you need to be studied. You need to make sure that you are prepared, that you've looked at all of the available evidence, that you have requested things that maybe weren't provided to you in an investigation, that it's complete, and that you have a picture of this. And a lot of times, at least for me, because I do worry, is this right? Are we correct here? And that preparation may include having to directly speak to witnesses. If I'm not sure, call. What are they going to say? What's their view of this? And does this stack up with this? And there needs to be some corroboration internally within a case to make sure that you're headed the right place. And be flexible, because probably some of the hardest situations that we've had when you talk about purpose under pressure is when the goal of the case isn't necessarily what the public thinks the goal should be.
Okay.
And so sometimes it looks as though, we're bowing out or taking a dive or maybe not achieving what everybody thinks we should achieve. And I think the average Joe on the street thinks, well, at the end of the case, if you're guilty, you get found guilty and then you get locked up. And that's not necessarily the case. And that's why we see movement in charges. There may be, they're not pleading to that charge. They're going to plead to a lesser charge because we're still achieving the original goal. And we don't need to have them plead as charged in order to achieve that goal. Or we don't necessarily go into a case with an eye towards locking this person up. There may be other things that we're achieving. So, and a lot of times the frustration is that we're achieving those goals. It's clear that there's ambiguity in that with the public, but ethics sort of dictate that you can't fully explain the rationale, or you've promised a victim or someone in the case that here's where we want to be. We arrive at that destination. We solidify it, and then there's this public outcry that you can't really fully explain to the public because there are things in the case that just need to remain confidential. So,
which leads me to a maybe a personal question. Have you ever found yourself too close to it, where maybe what's right and the societal pressure and even what you feel inside or things of that sort have made it difficult to know exactly what to do?
Yes.
Yeah.
You come across.
It's a human thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You get there and you're like, boy, this is, and they'll, the job of the defense, of course, is to be in constant contact with you. The good defense attorneys will be in constant contact, making that very point, and making that, hey, maybe you're a little off here, and they'll try to sow some seeds of doubt. So.
Yeah, and I forget about that. I'm talking to you, and yet it's the other side as well. It's on them as well to help balance this out and make sure that right gets done. I think too often we think of the defense attorney as the guy that tries to get the bad guy off, but in truth, they want the right thing as well. Typically, right? Is that right? Real quick question about small town versus large town, and maybe even a little bit of politics. It seems lately. And I don't mind. I'm an unapologetic conservative. That's okay. But I don't have a favorite. So I'll just go ahead and say that in advance. But it feels like politics on both sides of the court are entering into legal systems. Like we're using the courts to right or further or differentiate wrongs or whatever it might be on a political basis. And that feels wrong to me. Do you feel that in a local sense? Do you have an idea of what's taking place? Is this a wave, or is this a real thing that we need to be concerned about in the future? What are your thoughts on that?
I don't see it at the local level, at least here in Ashland. I've that allegation gets thrown around a little bigger. I prosecuted for 9 years in Mansfield, for Richland County, and occasionally, we would have situations that they would say, this is some sort of witch hunt or something. And, but clearly, nationally,
it's happening, right? It's not my imagination.
No, I feel as though there are some prosecutions that have been initiated very publicly on some things that maybe other people have done, but they don't get prosecuted for. And it's with a means of taking out a political opponent. And I had this conversation yesterday with a friend that, when we weaponize the court system as a means of political retribution, at that point we become a banana republic. So, we can argue about what Congress does, what the executive branch wants to do, what everybody else wants to do. What makes America great is our court system, the legal system.
From the Supreme Court all the way down. Absolutely.
You can do business here because the law is the law, and you operate accordingly, and that consistency. And you don't get consistency in the third world. They don't have that, and so it's much harder to do business. When you chip away at that, when you don't like the result that maybe a panel of judges gives you, and your reaction to that is not to say that's the rule of law, that's what's supposed to happen, we'll go back and figure out how to achieve our goal by another means. But to call for the downfall of that body, or to adjust that body in a way that you get the result that you want, is really not. That's scary, and so I really feel we're on a precipice here, and the next few months are going to tell us how that's going to go.
I think the next few months, and even the next, as power shifts, because I think both sides now are, if something doesn't change, everybody's just going to keep doing it. I think if we're going to weaponize it, truly, it'll be a weapon on both sides. And I also worry, and this is, you don't have to, but I worry about the Supreme Court. I remember growing up in government class thinking, man, the Supreme Court's cool because everything else is just up for debate and everything like that. But the Supreme Court, that's just the law, and it's people saying, look, this is how it's done. And it doesn't mess around. But even that, like you said, we're trying to stack it and move it in different ways on both sides. I want people who think my way. And I feel like the law shouldn't be about what we think. It should be about what it is. And right. So that works on both sides. Let's talk about the local, this podcast is meant for business leaders and organizations and how they accomplish goals and overcome obstacles and pressures. And I know there's a lot in the office of the prosecuting attorney, and I'm interested in what pressures you're having to overcome right now that make it hard to do your job.
Ooh, we are coming off 2 years of what I guess I would call staff turmoil.
Oh boy, so is everybody. Everybody is. We sort of had a domino effect that I did not see coming at all. And we had some employees that had been here quite a long time and had said they were going to retire. And then we are not a large office. Including me, we have 13 employees total. And we actually at the same time had added a staff member. The commissioners gave us the funding to hire an additional administrative assistant to try to take the pressure off the other three. So we were sort of in flux with what the job was going to be, and then we had some very long-time employees retire. And when we replaced them, it changed the dynamic, the office dynamic, just enough that we entered a place where we started losing people and hiring people, and then losing someone else, and then bringing them back, and it was strange. We had several months where we would just get a position filled, and then someone else would come in and say, I'm going to leave for a new job that maybe pays a little better, or there wasn't anybody walking out in frustration, but it seemed that people began looking outside our walls for employment. And of course, everyone's hiring, and they found it. And I don't begrudge any of them. The opportunity to them seemed better, so they made that decision, and off they went. So that then extended to attorney positions. And it turns out that not only can the corner restaurant not find busboys, attorneys aren't applying either. Can't find okay.
So it is at every level of the hiring game. It's extremely difficult to find people, and quality people are currently employed, and I think employers have figured out at this point that if you've got one that you like and that you believe is good, you need to keep them happy so they don't leave. And so everybody, it's very difficult to find people. And so, we went through a couple years of trying to fix staff. And then as they come in, they have to learn our system. And the system changes based on who left, because everybody has a very specific job function.
Yeah.
And so you got to retrain them, and then somebody else takes this on, and then somebody wants to move over here, and just a lot of. And I'm just a prosecutor. I like to prosecute criminals. And,
you want to show up and do your job and get it done.
I'll be the first to admit HR is not my thing. Working with people and trying to, when you're a trial attorney, you're very much a lone wolf, and so I get my materials, I go over to the court, and I do my thing, and so it's really personally an adaptation to try to, okay, what is really going on here? What do I need to figure out, and what do we need to do?
So I'm interested in this. I want to start back in something you mentioned. People all of a sudden had this opportunity to go around, and that's what happened in the world. Everybody had an opportunity to find something different, and we're trading employees, and that's still going on. There are still plenty of lawyers that are looking for work and coming out and becoming lawyers, and that's that's not going away. What could you have done differently, if you don't mind me asking this question, then? Now that you look back and say, man, I wish we'd have known that was coming because we'd have done this. This was not set up properly. And what have you been able to implement that now moving forward to try to calm things down? Looking back, I don't know that I could have foreseen that it was coming. So I don't know that I could have staved it off. And once it happened, it was so rapid. It's funny to say that now because it was like a 2-year period, but it seemed really fast at the time. Rapid fire.
And absolutely. Like you just get one nailed down and you go, whew, we got that done. And you come in the next day and they're like, have you got a minute? Ugh. And I could see the look on the face like, no.
I don't have a minute.
No. Like, why don't you take the afternoon?
I know those conversations.
And come back
Chris,
tomorrow.
we need to talk. Yeah.
Exactly. So, and it's always on the backside of a day off. I'm going to take a Tuesday off. And you're like, who takes a Tuesday off? And then here they come Friday, like, well, I have this opportunity.
So what have you done to try to impact that now? So what have you done to try to fix that moving forward?
I'm in closer communication with my people.
Good.
I'm going around on a regular basis trying to, what do you need? How you doing? And with maybe my more senior people asking how other people are doing. Everybody in here has to interface with each other in order to get their job done. And that actually, that can cause strife because you'll have someone that moves very fast, and then maybe the other person's not moving fast enough for them. And so you need to make, well, is that really, and have those discussions. Or like, well, so-and-so, I sent so-and-so an email yesterday and I haven't received a response back. And, okay, well, maybe they're busy. Maybe there's a reason they're triaging their day and this, and is there something else, we can work on and because I think by the nature of the job, I employ a lot of type A people and they're all very good, but they all are when the type A folks are dependent on other type A folks, everybody's doing their thing and you need to real dial down, make sure everybody's doing all right. And as strange as it is, take a break as an office and just say, let's slow it down and we'll, let's do a potluck. Let's bring in, some crock pots Friday. We'll shut the phones off for an hour and just sit,
One of the biggest problems we have as managers and leaders is sometimes we're not focusing on leading and we end up doing it for our sales team. How do we coach our people to help them figure out what self-limiting belief that they have that's holding them back from achieving the levels of success that they know they're capable of? Help them flush out what we call their own head trash, that thing that's holding them back. So work with your team, lead by example, watch your team achieve greater levels of success, and watch your team grow, and more importantly, watch your company and your business grow.
You know what's so hard about that, though, and this is great conversation for other businesses and organizations that are struggling with this. You've got a type A personality. Most businesses are run by a aggressive, get it done type of thing. And you're surrounded by type A people. And yet you have to be a manager. So you have to say, hey, let's have a potluck. It's like completely out of your wheelhouse. You don't want to have a potluck. I was the worst manager in the world. And I tell everybody and they all say, oh, you were fine. No, I wasn't, because I was go get them. And I trusted you to also be a go get them. And so I never had to tell you what to do. And I never had to slow down. And I never had to lead. And if you don't have leaders, you can't have people who will follow, and vice versa.
Right.
So I always fell down on that. I can't imagine you, Chris. I don't know you extremely well, but I bet you suggesting a potluck goes completely against everything.
Yes, I am the sort that I don't follow up with you to see if you did what I asked you to do.
Exactly.
Because I assume you did.
That's exactly
because
right.
I told you to do it.
That's exactly right.
And that's not the best management style, it turns out.
It's terrible.
At all.
It's
I found myself at Walmart. I discovered there's an entire section just for ice cream toppings. And I brought back about 6 gallons of ice cream and every topping I could put in the cart and stuck them in the break room and sent out an email saying, we now have a Sunday bar. If things are too much, go make a Sunday.
And they loved it. Did they love it?
As an office, yeah. Oh, yeah. We actually mentioned it when we were hiring people. We've got a Sunday bar.
Yeah.
So it's the small things, I think. Things that are sort of, seem strange, may seem a little ridiculous, but just, tell everybody, calm down. And I think what drives it in here that I've tried to stress to everybody, we are all electronic. So post-COVID, even before COVID, we were doing court hearings via Zoom. We rely heavily on email. Our case management system on both civil and criminal are cloud-based. And everybody sits in here, and the primary mode of communication is electronic. And there's no context for electronic. And so every message I send isn't necessarily a priority. I may send out 5 emails because I know that on my calendar, I'm not going to be back in the office tomorrow till 2 p.m. And I'm thinking about it now. So I'll send out something that is then viewed as this pressing directive. And it's not. I just send an email like, hey, what's going on with this case? And then it apparently stresses the recipient out.
Yeah.
That I'm asking for a status update about them. And they're like, what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
Or you try to shift responsibilities between people to try to even it out, make life easier for everyone. And it's seen as punishment to someone.
Yeah.
Someone is like, I have obviously not done that well, so you have removed that duty from me.
Yeah.
And it takes some massaging, and I consider that a personal breakthrough that I realized that. Because if you wait until something happens and then realign based on that occurrence, it's viewed as punishment.
Mm-hmm.
It's a punitive measure then to realign, and the person that then maybe has this duty here is seen as, well, now I'm getting dumped on because this person screwed up, and you gotta. I think that's part of that communication is going around and saying, what are you spending all your time on? What's jamming you up? And is somebody else over here maybe better suited for that particular duty, and we can move something of theirs over to you? And I'm trying to streamline life, not punish you or tell you that you're a lesser human being because this aspect of the job is taking up all your time.
I feel your pain, and I love more than anything that you're embracing this opportunity to become a better leader of a group and improving the overall culture of the office and things of that sort. I'm wondering if very quickly the things that you've learned and are learning and are implementing, what would you share with another business owner or a leader who's kind of struggling with the same things? What's like the first thing they can do maybe to head off some of the if they're having culture issues, if they're having hiring problems, whatever it might be, what's one of the first things they could do to kind of find what's going wrong and how to address it?
I think they need to talk as informally as possible with the employees individually.
Yeah.
You can't call everybody into the conference room, and think you're going to have a meaningful conversation.
That's right.
In front of everybody. You can't.
Nope.
You can't call them into your office to have some strange, I just want to chat sitting behind your desk, because they're not viewing it the way you want it to be viewed. You need to go over, pull up a chair next to them, and say, "Have you got a minute?" And say, I'm thinking about trying to make life a little better for everybody. What have you got going on that we could do better? What, and not put it in, what's your problem today?
Mm-hmm.
What can I do to just try to make your job a little better and a little more palatable for you? And, I think that probably translates generally, because we have a lot of stuff here that's real heavy, heavy stuff. And you just have to, recognize that, take a break. That's been a problem of mine. I don't know that I'm affected as much by what we see. I guess or maybe I've just seen it a long time. I will forget sometimes that the average person isn't used to dealing with the topics that we deal with. And so I've had to sort of housebreak myself a little bit and just either stay off some topics, or just, people say, "Hey, you got any cases going on?"
What's happening?
Yeah, we got a few. They're okay.
And that's kind of how I want to wrap this up. It's kind of an overarching question, but I've also told people before, I've been on the school board, and that has a lot of communication and things. And behind the scenes, at least you think the facts, or you have, data and things to make decisions on. And outside the scenes, on where everybody else lives, they don't see the same things that you see. And I see in today's world, I find it very difficult to know what's true. Every headline has a reason for being there. It's trying to persuade me into something, and that's a whole different argument. And I think that's a media problem. It's not even political. Everything's trying to tell me what to believe. How can your public, the people you serve, how can they best become informed of things, whether it's in Ashland or in even anything that they might be interested? Not everyone's interested in Ashland world. It's not big enough for them, or whatever it might be. How can people find the facts, or how can people best become informed in the things that matter to them? Because you see it, this, you can see the truth on the back end, and you're trying not to have personal opinions and things. You're trying to base it, so it's there, but it's really hard for people like me to find it.
Absolutely. The reporting just isn't there.
So how do we do it? How do we become interested in what you do? How do we support what you do? How do we fight what you do? How do we have an opinion when we don't have access to it?
Right. Back in the day, you'd have to come down to the courthouse and sit in the back of the courtroom and really see what's going on. There's a fair amount of transparency within the cases. The clerk of courts has all of the criminal cases online. Most of those documents that are filed are PDF form, and a majority of the case hearings are live streamed on the county court's website. So there's some access to it directly as a primary observer.
Okay,
but that's a tough question for anybody in the criminal justice system, because it's always it's sort of set up to be a little murky. And I'll have journalists call and say, well, what's going on with this? I said, well, I can't tell you that. We're not. The process. Sometimes keeping the process fair doesn't mean publicly letting all of everything out initially.
It's not your job. That's a really good point. It's not your job to inform the public. You want them to be informed, but that's not your job. Your job is to seek justice, which brings us kind of full circle.
Right. We do what we can in that regard, but one of those systems is the media, and they're failing.
And I've got views on that, and someday I'll share them. I don't very quickly. I don't know that they're failing. I think it's set up. It's a for-profit business. Media is for profit, and the only way they're going to sell advertising is if they have the right listeners or viewers, and the only way they do that is to tell them what they want to see or hear. And so they choose that on purpose. And there's a whole lot of other things, but it's not supposed to be that way. I don't think that's the way the founding fathers set this up, but that's the way it's become. And people want to tell their side of the story, no matter what. Anyway, it's a show for a different day. Chris, thank you for being on the show, and I appreciate it. And I hope I didn't dig in too deep. I know you have to hold some things close to the vest, but I appreciate your vulnerability, and thank you for sharing some of the things you're going through at the office.
Sure. Thanks for the conversation, Brian. I appreciate it.
Chris, if somebody wanted to reach out, what are the contact information? If somebody needed to talk to the court offices or learn things about how they can become informed or whatever, how would they reach out to you and contact?
Probably the easiest is to find us on our webpage. That has all the links. That is links to different things. You'll have link to email and all the contact information. So Google search for the Ashland County Prosecutor. We'll get you there.
Tremendous. That's Chris Tunnell. He's the prosecuting attorney for Ashland County. I'm really glad that you were on the show. I couldn't wait for this show because I'm a black and white guy, Chris. But I always, in sports, in anything, I fight for the underdog. I go after the guy that I think's getting screwed, for lack of better words. Right. And too often, I don't know how you do it, because if someone tells me, "Hey, Brian, I didn't do it," man, I believe them. That's just the way I'm built. If they tell me I didn't do it, I'm like, well, geez, you must be getting screwed, because something's, how can they be going to get you? But it can't be that way. People shouldn't know this, but I thought OJ was innocent. That's how far I go. Even though I know that's not the fact, I just want to believe in those people. So I value what you do, because I know it's not easy, and to be able to go after justice and do it the right way without leaning into one side or the other, ethically doing things on purpose. That's what life is all about, and I appreciate your being a role model in that way.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for being on the show. That's Chris Tunnell. He is our guest on Purpose Under Pressure. We do this every week, and we will do this again next week with our partners, Ruby Sandler by the Ruby Group. Sellers are under pressure to perform, and Sandler helps you to succeed on purpose. You'll find all of our past episodes, all 4 years, and now in our 5th year, season plus of Purpose Under Pressure at brianmediastrategies.com/podcast and wherever you stream your favorite shows. We do this every week, and we will see you next time on Purpose.